Hey everybody, thanks for tuning in to my review of Guardians of the Galaxy. Marvel Studios, of course, Disney property based on the comic book of the same name, starring Chris Pratt, Dave Bautista, Vin Diesel as Groot, and so on and so forth. I know you all know that information, so I'm going to get straight to the nitty-gritty of the story. and I'm going to try and keep the spoilers to a minimum, but FYI, there's some spoilers are just not going to be able to avoid. First and foremost, I will say that for all of you who complained about the music track or the Walkman in the trailer where we see them getting checked into jail for crimes unknown at the moment, I will say that the cassette played a bigger role than anybody expected. James Gunn wrote and directed this film, and I can say that it comes true in his fashion. He's a great writer and he's a great director. The story had a good flow to it. It didn't have much of a slow pace. It had a medium to fast pace when it needed it, and the dialogue was superb. I really love this film. I really love the characters, especially Peter Quill, which is played by Chris Pratt. But even then, Dave Bautista, who is not an actor by trade, but is a wrestler by trade, which that still requires some acting skill. He was absolutely fantastic in this. He played Drax the Destroyer, a man whose family was killed by the forces of the Kree, and so on. I will say that one of the things I enjoyed is that, as Rocket put it, Drax's species is they cannot take figurative speak. When doing an interview, Bautista took the interview as Drax, and they said, "Did you hear that it's raining cats and dogs outside?" He leans in, "Are the dogs okay?" Which it literally means that there's no figurative speak. You have to be quite literal on what you're trying to communicate with him. As far as characters go, I expected Rocket and Groot to be the comedy relief throughout this whole thing, and honestly they were, but at the same time, the film gave enough time to give background on everyone in not an obvious sense. Like, obviously we know that the star of the movie, which is Chris Pratt playing Peter Quill, aka Star-Lord, had to get a little bit more detail on his background because this is the kid who gets pulled out of Earth and ends up in this Wild West that is the galaxy. We got a little bit more insight on his, but eventually, during a normal flow of the story, of all things, for example, Drax's background gets thrown in there right after when they run into him. Groot and Rocket, you hear a little bit of other people are describing who they are, but then Rocket himself describes his origin in a very teary-eyed, heartfelt moment that he was having by himself. And Gamora also goes on to explain her own origin story and why she is doing what she's doing in the film. So it did have a great pace. The movie had a fantastic pace. The soundtrack was fantastic as well. This is where the tape falls into play. And here's a little bit of a spoiler. The audio tape is actually a gift from Peter's mom before she dies. She made the mixtape for him, and he was listening to it the night she died. And throughout the movie, you'll hear songs from that soundtrack, or that mixtape, being played because the people are actually playing the music off the cassette tape, not just conveniently placed into the actual movie soundtrack, but somebody's playing the Walkman in the background. There are actual scores in the movie which are fantastic as well. The special effects are done really well. The physical sequences, or other gunfights or physical altercations, are well done. There's no crappy shaky cam effects. There's no too fast to even tell where characters are in perspective of each other. The sequences were done great. The sequences that were a little confusing at times were the space fights between the ships and dogfights. Could have been a little bit better, but it was still enjoyable. Michael Rooker, who played Yondu, or I can't remember the name of him right now, was also fantastic. Michael Rooker really nailed this character incredibly well. Makeup looked fantastic. The special effects looked fantastic. But he just came off as a character he's known for playing in the past. It was like watching Merle in space, which was fantastic. As far as supporting cast, Karen Gillan, who played Nebula, it's totally worth her losing her beautiful red hair to play this role. She looked fantastic. Her makeup was amazing. I don't know if she used a stunt double or not, but the fighting sequences were done great with her as well. We do get a good glimpse, and here's the big spoiler, which I'm sure Marvel fans already knew, but we got a really good look at Thanos, and I have to say, I was in awe of Thanos. Knowing the character, I've read for years, seen him in animation sequences over the years, and so on and so forth. I was in complete awe of the character. He looked amazing. He was only on screen for about a minute, but man, he is worthy of being the big bad in the future Marvel films. And I will say this: if you're a Marvel fan and you're familiar with the Infinity Wars and the Infinity Gauntlet situation, in this movie, they finally show you why items like the Tesseract and so on are such a threat to humanity and the galaxy itself. The Infinity Stone that shows up in this movie is shown how powerful it can be. And it's just one of those things where you're like, gotcha. You've got me. I totally understand what the threat is now. And Benicio del Toro does make his appearance once again as a collector, and pay close attention when those scenes come up if you haven't seen the movie yet. And please stay for the after credits because a little bit more will be revealed of what the upcoming Marvel films will be. And I've got to say, I'm excited. Oh yeah, I'm excited for if that becomes a film, I'm so down for it. Like no joking here, I'm excited for this. And of course, as a whole, the film is just a wonderful mix. A friend of mine, fellow community manager Warflight, put it best. That first time you went to see Star Wars in theaters and you came out of the theater thinking, oh man, I gotta see this again. That's the effect I had here. And this is why. This is not a perfect film. There are some moments that could have been better, but there's so few and far in between that I didn't care. I can't even really remember moments that upset me or made me feel like, oh, this again is so boring. Honestly, there aren't enough for me to remember. As far as the execution, it was great. There was just so many good things going on here that were worth the Marvel logo and label here, because what they did well, they executed the story well. What I liked the most was we weren't back on Earth like the rest of the Marvel films. I mean, Thor had to come to Earth. Iron Man, obviously based on Earth. Iron Man 2 and 3 still based on Earth. The Incredible Hulk still based out of Earth. The Avengers movie still based out of Earth. So I was glad, and even Thor 2: The Dark World still came back to Earth. And I get it. That's one of the reasons that people can relate to them, is that these heroes roll around New York City in the comic books for the most part. But here we are in a galaxy far away, in unknown territory to all of us. And I'll fully admit, I'm not a fan of the Guardians of the Galaxy books. I've never really taken the time to read them, but I've been familiar with the characters, did an animation, and Rocket gets thrown out there often enough as it is into the book lore and so on and so forth. So I will say that what made this so great for me was being able to be in a world that I'm not familiar with, and having Marvel not take my hand like a little kid and walk me through and go, these are people that do this and these are people that do that. We just went through the story, focused on our characters' development, focused on the big threat that they had to deal with, and move forward. And that's what's so great about it. Because now it's one of those things where if I want to learn more about where, no spoilers, map location nowhere is, and what that's about. They gave a quick glimpse of what it is and why it's called Nowhere and what the origin is. But if I want to learn more, I gotta go buy me some comics and learn. And that's if I want to. You don't have to. They still give you enough explanation to be sufficient. I will say that we didn't deal fully with Star-Lord's origin. There's still a little bit of question of why he was taken from Earth and relation to his father and all that other stuff. But that's kind of the good thing. We'll probably learn more in 2017 when the new one, the second Guardians of the Galaxy comes in, which is already in production. It means the script is getting its touches and, you know, dabs here and there. So with that, if anything, I really recommend this movie. I have not seen Captain America and the Winter Soldier. I heard that was really good, but this is fantastic. I freaking loved it. And I honestly cannot wait to go see it again. Next week is the weekend is Ninja Turtles, and I'm not that excited for that. But this is worth getting excited for. So go check it out. Do yourself a favor if you can. Skip on the snacks if you have to. You know, budget it. It is worth watching. It is worth seeing on the big screen. So till next time, next film, next review. I'll see you then.